In the 1970s, a dark shadow fell across the hippie trail, a popular route stretching from Europe through the heart of Asia. Thousands of young travelers sought freedom and adventure, unaware that they were being hunted by a master of deception and manipulation. At the center of this mystery was Charles Sobhraj, a man whose charisma masked a predatory nature and a chilling, calculated intelligence. Born in Vietnam and raised in France, Sobhraj moved through borders with ease, crafting a persona as a wealthy and sophisticated gem dealer. He possessed an uncanny ability to read people, exploiting their kindness and trust to draw them into his dangerous and deadly orbit. He used this facade to gain the trust of vulnerable backpackers, drawing them into his orbit before drugging and robbing them without mercy. His victims were often left helpless and confused, their identities stolen as he moved effortlessly from one country to the next with ease. Alongside accomplices like Marie-André Leclerc, he orchestrated a series of disappearances that left international authorities completely baffled and searching for answers. The scale of his crimes was vast, spanning across Thailand, Nepal, and India, leaving a trail of broken lives and unanswered questions behind. His heinous crimes earned him the infamous moniker, the Bikini Killer, after the discovery of his victims along the coast of Thailand. The discovery of these bodies shocked the world, revealing a level of cruelty that few could have imagined possible at the time. These crimes were facilitated by the severe limitations of 1970s law enforcement, which lacked modern digital databases and effective cross-border communication systems. Police forces in different countries operated in silos, rarely sharing information quickly enough to track a criminal moving across multiple international borders. There were no modern international databases to cross-reference fingerprints or criminal records, making it nearly impossible to connect the dots of his crimes. DNA profiling was still a distant dream, and communication relied heavily on slow paperwork, telegrams, and unreliable international telephone calls. Sobhraj exploited these systemic weaknesses to evade capture for years, moving like a ghost through a world that was not yet interconnected. He frequently crossed borders before investigators could even begin to link the cases, using stolen passports to assume entirely new identities. When cornered, he was known to bribe officials, further complicating the efforts of those few who were beginning to suspect his true nature. His crimes became a textbook example of how organized criminals could exploit the lack of coordination between different nations during the 1970s. However, the relentless persistence of individuals like Dutch diplomat Herman Knippenberg began to slowly unravel his intricate and deadly web of lies. Knippenberg, stationed in Bangkok, noticed a disturbing pattern involving missing Dutch tourists that others had simply dismissed as mere coincidences. He painstakingly gathered evidence, interviewed witnesses, and compared passports, refusing to let the cases go cold despite the lack of official support. This quiet, determined investigation finally set the stage for a long overdue reckoning, marking the beginning of the end for his reign. In 1976, Sobhraj made a fatal error when he attempted to drug a group of French university students at a hotel in Delhi. The victims became suspicious before losing consciousness and managed to alert the authorities, leading to a swift and decisive police intervention. Indian police arrested him, marking one of the biggest victories for law enforcement in their long and frustrating pursuit of the killer. He was convicted of multiple offenses and sentenced to prison in India, where many believed justice had finally caught up with him. But Charles Sobhraj was far from finished, as he would soon prove that even the thickest prison walls could not contain his ambition. In 1986, he staged one of the most astonishing prison escapes ever recorded, turning his incarceration into a stage for his own theater. He hosted what appeared to be a birthday celebration inside Delhi's Tihar jail, using the event to mask his true, calculated intentions. Using drug-laced sweets and food, he poisoned the prison guards until they lost consciousness, allowing him to simply walk out of the facility. The escape embarrassed prison authorities worldwide, proving that Sobhraj remained a dangerous and highly capable manipulator even while behind bars. However, his freedom lasted only a few weeks, as Indian police captured him again in Goa and returned him to his cell. Some investigators believe the escape was a calculated move to delay his extradition to Thailand, where he faced much harsher legal consequences. After serving approximately 21 years in Indian prisons, Sobhraj was finally released in 1997 and quietly returned to his home in France. For several years, he lived a life of relative freedom, giving interviews and appearing to enjoy the notoriety of his dark reputation. Then came another unexpected twist in 2003, when he traveled openly to Nepal, despite being a wanted man in that very country. Authorities recognized him in a casino in Kathmandu, leading to a dramatic arrest that finally brought him back into the legal system. This time, modern policing, better international cooperation, and decades of collected evidence worked against him, leaving him with nowhere to hide. He was convicted of the 1,975 murders of Connie Jo Bronzich and Laurent Carrière, receiving a life sentence in a Nepalese prison. In 2014, he received an additional sentence for another murder conviction connected to the same period, ensuring he would remain behind bars. After nearly 2 decades in Nepalese prison, he was released in December 2022 following a court order related to his age and health. He was subsequently deported to France, closing the final chapter on a criminal career that had spanned over 4 decades of terror. The Charles Sobhraj investigation transformed how many investigators viewed international crime, highlighting the critical need for better cross-border communication. His case proved that criminals can easily exploit weak communication between countries, making international intelligence sharing an absolute necessity for justice. It also underscored how passport fraud can enable violent crime, forcing nations to tighten their security and verification processes significantly. The persistence of dedicated investigators like Knippenberg showed that even when systems fail, individual determination can still bring criminals to justice. Advances in international cooperation have since made it much harder for criminals to evade justice in the way that Sobhraj once did. His story remains both a warning and an example of how international policing has evolved to meet the challenges of a globalized world. The terrifying crimes of Charles Sobhraj eventually inspired the acclaimed 2021 drama series titled The Serpent, produced by the BBC and Netflix. The series stars Tahar Rahim as Sobhraj and closely follows the investigation led by Herman Knippenberg, recreating many of the real events. Praised for its tense storytelling and authentic period setting, the show became one of the most talked about true crime dramas on the platform. While some scenes are dramatized for television, the series remains broadly faithful to the documented investigation of this notorious serial killer. Ultimately, Charles Sobhraj did not rely on guns or masks, but rather on his ability to study human behavior and exploit kindness. He took advantage of the systemic weaknesses of an era when countries struggled to share information quickly, staying one step ahead for years. But persistence, cooperation, and determined investigators eventually closed in, proving that justice can prevail when people refuse to give up. His story reminds us that while criminals may exploit flaws in the system, the truth will eventually find a way to emerge. That is exactly why the legend of the Serpent continues to fascinate and haunt the world even decades after his crimes. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into one of history's most complex and chilling criminal cases. Please subscribe and comment on what story we should cover next, and thank you for your ongoing support of our channel. The year 1976 marked a critical turning point in the hunt for Charles Sobhraj, when Indian authorities finally moved to intercept him. He had grown increasingly bold, attempting to drug a group of unsuspecting French university students at a hotel in New Delhi. The victims, however, became suspicious just before losing consciousness, allowing them to alert the local police before it was too late. This swift intervention by the Indian police resulted in his arrest, a massive victory for law enforcement after years of his evasion. He was quickly convicted of multiple offenses and sentenced to serve time in Tihar jail, where many believed his reign had ended. Yet, for a master manipulator like Sobhraj, prison walls were merely a temporary obstacle rather than a permanent end to his schemes. In 1986, he orchestrated one of the most audacious prison escapes in history, turning a birthday celebration into a calculated breakout. He managed to drug the prison guards using laced sweets and food, rendering them unconscious while he simply walked out of the gates. The escape was a humiliating blow to prison authorities, sparking a massive manhunt that embarrassed law enforcement agencies on a global scale. His freedom, however, was short-lived, as Indian police tracked him down in Goa just a few weeks after his daring escape. Some investigators later theorized that the escape was a strategic move designed to delay his eventual extradition to Thailand for murder. By keeping himself imprisoned in India, he successfully avoided the much harsher legal consequences he would have faced under Thai law. He continued to navigate the legal system with chilling precision, using every available loophole to stall the inevitable process of justice. After serving 21 years in Indian custody, Sobhraj was finally released in 1997 and made the decision to return to France. Back on European soil, he seemed to embrace his notoriety, giving interviews and appearing to revel in the dark fame he had cultivated. But the shadow of his past crimes in Asia remained, and the international community had not forgotten the lives he had stolen. In 2003, in a move that defied logic, Sobhraj traveled to Nepal, apparently unaware that he remained a wanted man there. His presence was quickly noted by authorities who recognized him in a casino in Kathmandu, leading to his immediate and dramatic arrest. This time, the landscape of policing had shifted, with modern databases and better international cooperation working firmly against his favor. The evidence collected over decades was finally brought to bear, linking him directly to the murders of 2 young backpackers in 1975. The trial in Nepal was a landmark moment, resulting in life imprisonment for the man who had terrorized the famous hippie trail. Even years later, in 2014, he received an additional sentence for another murder conviction, further cementing his long-term incarceration. He spent nearly 2 decades behind bars in Nepal, watching as the world changed, and his influence as a criminal mastermind faded. Finally, in December 2022, a court order based on his advanced age and declining health led to his release from prison. He was subsequently deported back to France, effectively closing a dark and complex chapter in the history of international criminal investigations. This long, winding journey toward justice fundamentally transformed how global agencies share intelligence and cooperate across borders to track offenders. The case exposed the fragility of international law in the 1970s and forced a necessary evolution in how police forces communicate. Today, the legacy of Charles Sobhraj serves as a chilling reminder of how easily human trust can be exploited by a predator. Yet, it also highlights the ultimate triumph of dedicated, persistent investigation over the systemic failures that once allowed him to thrive. The enduring fascination with his life, immortalized in the series The Serpent, ensures his story remains a cautionary tale for travelers. It reminds us that even when systems are flawed, the persistence of individuals like Herman Knippenberg can eventually bring monsters to light. Sobhraj did not rely on brute force or weapons, but on the subtle, dangerous art of manipulating the kindness of strangers. He exploited the gaps in a world that was becoming more connected, yet still lacked the tools to track those moving across borders. His ability to assume false identities and bribe officials allowed him to vanish time and time again, staying one step ahead. But as technology advanced, the walls closed in, proving that no criminal can outrun the reach of modern forensic and digital evidence. The story of the Serpent is not just about a killer, but about the slow, steady march of justice through a changing world. It highlights the necessity of international cooperation, showing that borders should not be barriers to the pursuit of the truth. Every passport he forged and every identity he stole became a piece of the puzzle that eventually led to his downfall. The victims, whose lives were cut short, finally received a measure of closure as the legal system caught up with their killer. His life remains a subject of intense study for criminologists, who look at his patterns to better understand the mind of a con artist. The drama series, The Serpent, brought these events to a new generation, sparking renewed interest in the details of the investigation. Viewers were captivated by the tension, the period-accurate settings, and the chilling portrayal of a man who felt no remorse. While the show dramatized certain elements, it remained grounded in the documented reality of the crimes and the subsequent manhunt. It serves as a bridge between the past and the present, showing how far we have come in our ability to catch criminals. The lessons learned from Sobhraj's reign are now integrated into the training of international police forces across the globe today. We now have digital fingerprinting, DNA profiling, and instant communication, tools that were mere science fiction in the 1970s. These advancements ensure that the kind of freedom Sobhraj once enjoyed is no longer possible for those who wish to commit such crimes. The world is smaller, more connected, and significantly more vigilant, making it much harder for predators to hide in plain sight. Yet, the story of the Serpent remains a warning that we must never take our security or our international systems for granted. We must continue to support the investigators who work in the shadows to keep our borders safe and our citizens protected. As we reflect on this chilling saga, we are reminded of the power of persistence in the face of overwhelming odds. The hunt for Sobhraj was a marathon, not a sprint, requiring decades of patience, evidence gathering, and unwavering determination. It is a testament to the fact that justice, while sometimes slow, is a force that eventually finds its way to the truth. The Serpent may have been a master of deception, but he was ultimately defeated by the collective efforts of the international community. His story will continue to be told, serving as a dark mirror to the vulnerabilities of our past and the strengths of our present. We thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of history's most notorious and complex criminal cases. If you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing to our channel for more investigations into the world's most mysterious events. Let us know in the comments what other historical stories or true crime cases you would like us to cover next. Your support allows us to continue producing high-quality content that explores the fascinating, often dark, corners of our shared human history. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video as we continue to uncover the truth.